Welcome everyone to Real Estate with Gwen Price, and today I have as my guest Trina Tallon, who is a mortgage specialist with Neighbourhood Dominion Lending. Hi Trina.
Good morning, Gwen.
Hi, how are you doing?
Great, good to see you.
Good to see you. It's hot, hot weather and hot market. As I was just telling you, like this is a kind of we keep saying the same thing every month, but the number of listings down about 20%, sales numbers down about 7%, but the average sale price is up, and it's up about 13% from last year at this time. And part of that is there's so many competing offers because the inventory is so low, and there's lots of people out there looking. Interest rates are still staying down, aren't they?
They are.
Yeah, like I'm not quite sure what it's all about, why there's such a demand. I'll go with it, but I don't know if it's a reaction to COVID. Everybody wants some kind of, they want to, I don't know, have a nest, they want a cocoon, they want to have a home, which is great. I mean, it's great that people do want to still buy and sell real estate. That's my job, right? But I just find it, people were only kind of a little bit nervous in the beginning, but then after that, it just went back to what we were experiencing before COVID.
So what's the percentage that listings are down by?
Listings are down about 20% for the city of Greater Sudbury, and even for the outlying areas too. So that's there's lots of people looking, but limited inventory. And in particular, the hottest price range right now, of course, our average sale price right now is about $325, and so anything on either side of that is busy. But the highest number of sales were in the 250 to 300 range. And then, the next one was the 200 to 250. After you get over the 400, the number of sales are less. So anything under 400 is really competitive for sure. So,
Yes.
yeah.
I think part of it, it could partially have something to do with COVID, but people just like to own homes, right? And when you have a 20% decrease in listings from last year, but last month it was a lot higher percentage, right? And then April was a lot higher percentage. So that's a lot of listings not available to perhaps the same number of buyers that are out there.
Yeah, and I think there's still some hesitation on maybe anybody who's a senior or anybody who's got some health issues. They're still a little nervous about having a whole bunch of people through their house. We certainly, as professional realtors, take a lot of precautions. We're doing the whole hand sanitizing. We're screening. Every time I show a house, I screen a client. If I saw them yesterday, I make them sign again the next day. It's every time I meet a client, and we got to be careful still. Yes, Sudbury did fantastic through COVID, but
yes,
we're getting people coming from Toronto to invest here, with some of the bigger properties and rentals and all that kind of thing. And there's cottagers coming through the city, all of that sort of. So, but we're doing really, really well. And I think a lot of people are treating it seriously. There's some that maybe not so much, and they're, wanting everything to be the way it was. And it's not. We have to still be very cautious. So I always tell people, when I'm meeting them and they're talking about listing their property, I tell them all the protocols that we have in place to show a property. So it is a good time to sell. And certainly with inventory down and people wanting to buy, it's a good time to sell.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so there's a lot of, there's a lot of misinformation talking about some of the rules that are changing with CMHC in particular, and maybe you can talk a bit about that, because it has affected some of the purchasers out there.
Sure. So the first thing I want to say, and what I say every time we get together and meet and talk, is to get a true pre-approval done by someone like myself who specializes in mortgages.
Yes.
That is all that we do. There's nothing else that we look at. It's just mortgages, because it's it seems to be, especially this year, it's a constantly changing animal right now, where what that has to do with income, has to do with whether or not you have your job, what industry you're in, all kinds of things have been going on.
Yeah.
And to stay on top of that, you need a professional that only deals in mortgages. Now, what's happening with CMHC is a mortgage default insurer. So if you put less than 20% down, people call it the CMHC fee. But what people don't realize are two things, actually, that there are actually three different mortgage default insurers. There's CMHC, Genworth, and Canada Guarantee. And also that quite often people that put 20 to 35% down, the bank or lender are actually paying for the insurance in the background in case of default, to take the risk off of the bank or the banks.
Right.
Now, so CMHC had a two-tiered system when it came to credit scores. So a credit score of 680 always got you the highest percentage of income versus debt for your affordability ratios. Anything below 680 to a minimum of about 600, 610, they decreased that percentage for the affordability ratios. So the affordability ratios at 680 were 44 and 39 for your total debt, and just your gross debt being the house. And then the next level down was 42 and 35. What CMHC has done is they have decreased to just the lower level for maximum affordability, and they have increased the minimum credit score for someone. Now, Genworth and Canada Guarantee have not changed their criteria. They are still in that two-tiered system. How this affects buyers is that a number of the banks have taken on the CMHC criteria. Even though the banks may use Genworth or Canada Guarantee, they've still adopted the CMHC criteria. Not all lenders, not all banks, but I've heard from different clients who have walked into their bank that they've been told that the bank is following the CMHC rules now. Where this is going to affect people the most is people who have high use of credit cards and revolving credit or don't make their payments.
Right.
That credit score, I've seen credit scores that have completely bottomed out because folks have run up their credit cards and run up their lines of credit to greater than 50% of the allowable limit, or have gone over, and that's just as bad as missing a payment.
Right.
So they go and they get a pre-qualification, and whoever they're dealing with doesn't pull their credit bureau, tells them to go shopping, and then they get the offer in, and they go back to whoever's given them the pre-qualification, the credit bureau gets pulled, and there's issues on it. The score is too low or anything like that. They're not prepared.
They've probably competed in a multi-offer situation, and they won thinking, they were pre-approved, quote unquote, and in fact it wasn't totally pre-approved, and so that hurts the seller, because maybe the seller has missed out on another potential buyer because they assumed everything was going to be fine with that person because they bid the highest.
Absolutely. Yeah. And most buyers, it's not their job to know what I know at all.
No.
And
that's why I don't do that. That's why I say you have to talk to somebody like you, because it's more than I can keep up with.
Oh, for sure. And it is constantly changing. And I keep going back to the changes that were made in 2018, and people just think that a stress test got implemented, but that was the smallest part of it, was the stress test. Everything else had to do with rates and types of property and credit scores and things like that.
Well, and it is a complicated process. I mean, years ago, we would just go to the bank and say, okay, buy a house and all that, but there's so much more into it. And I mean, they are trying to, I guess, protect us from ourselves. The general public, like you say, they've racked up debt on their credit cards, everything's maxed out, and so they're a risk to the lending institutions, because
They are.
very easily default on their mortgage.
There's a lot of concern about debt, and you're right. It's these rules get put into place to protect our economy on a whole and to protect us all, because if people start going into default, those who don't default and who do not carry a lot of debt and they end up paying as well, right?
Yeah.
Because of all of that. So my biggest concern, and you and I have talked about this so many times, is that when the government does make rule changes when it comes to lending, they don't communicate it well.
Yeah, and you read, everybody wants to, they look at a headline and they never dig into the details, right? They look and say, oh my goodness, that's what's happening, but they don't really know what all that is behind it. And it isn't an easy thing. It's like we said, it's complicated. It isn't just clear cut how all of these things are being processed. And certainly it needs a specialist to get people through all of this, because you also know, there's little ins and outs to all of this. It isn't just, okay, you submit that form and you get an answer back, but it isn't. There's a lot to it, a lot more to it.
For sure. So I would suggest, I'm going to say it again, get a true pre-approval. Yeah. Make sure you're working with a licensed real estate agent, selling or buying, because that's, whenever a private file comes across my desk, like a private sale, clients have no idea what they're doing. They're like, well, what do we do now? Well, hire a real estate agent.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a reason why we're still around, and it is very tempting to sell and buy privately, but I mean, things have got more complicated all the time. Every year we go by, there's some new form or some new way of doing things, and it's partly because of things that have happened that people got into unfortunate circumstances. So when you say a true pre-approval, that means that you've pulled the credit bureau on the individual and what's going on there.
And I get all their income documentation up front, and quite often their down payment documentation up front, and then any separation agreements.
I know. It's the documentation, because some of the employers were maybe not working the hours that they were, when you needed that employer's letter, and it was taking longer, and when you've only got like 7 days to get all your conditions together, it's hard if 3-4 of those days are gobbled up waiting for proof that you actually got a job and your income is there. So
yes,
it has to be done ahead of time.
People do a ton of research. This is the biggest purchase of folks' life for the majority of people out there. And a lot of times more time is spent on researching let's say a snowmobile.
I know. Yeah.
Than making sure that they could go and buy a piece of property, a home. And a lot of folks say, well, I just bought a car, and why do you need all this documentation? They just need a pay stub. My response is always, because they can come and take your car. They can't come and take your house.
Yeah,
it's not an easy process.
Yeah, exactly. And again, too, like, don't do any big ticket purchases before the deal closes. Please wait till after. Get the house, then buy the car, the truck, whatever, but not ahead of time, because all of that up until closing, I mean, all of that credit information is still there. If you do something kind of crazy before that, that's not good. The banks won't be happy.
No, not at all. And because it all comes down to ratios. And my saying is, buy the house so you have the garage to put the new truck in.
Yeah. People think, I guess, because they got approved today, that you're good, and maybe closing's 2 months away, and just don't get busy shopping for anything else.
Exactly. Yeah. That's right.
I mean, like we keep saying this all the time, we get together, and pre-approval, it's so important. And also, because of these changes, people don't understand what does it mean? How is that going to affect me? What's 680? What is that number? All of those things. And that's why it's so important to talk to a specialist.
And that's something I wanted to mention to you too. And I'm pretty sure you and I've talked about this. The credit score that I'm referring to, only we as lenders can get that score. It's called the FICO score.
It's not the one that you can get on the internet on your bank, because now your bank, there's a link now to get your credit.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a risk assessment score.
Yeah.
And those could be off by hundreds of points.
Whoa. That's
or bang on. It depends on how your credit is. But yeah, those little credit scores are not, they're not a good indicator of where you actually are as far as credit is concerned.
Yeah, for when it comes time to buy a house, it's very important. And again, the pre-approval is so important, and we've got a crazy market, so you cannot be competing on, you know, like one the other night had 12 offers. So what do you think is going to happen with that price of that house, right? It's going to go over list price, and you know, you want, somebody probably will go in without conditions, period. Well, for everybody's sake, you hope that that they have done everything they needed to do to make sure that they could do that, right? So it's
well, and with these competing offers, one piece of advice that I would pass on to realtors, other than their clients getting their true pre-approval, is see if you can find out what percentage of a down payment they're doing. Because as soon as they do 20%, 99.9% of the time, the lender's going to want an appraisal done.
Yeah.
So the 5 business days in this climate is just so tough, because now we have to get an appraiser in there, right, and, you know, get that done. So
just snap your fingers and they're ready to go in and do an appraisal, because they're busy as well, right? They're doing appraisals on lots of different properties. So it's,
I sent my appraiser 6 appraisals this morning.
Oh. Yeah, so
he's like, are you killing me right now? I said, spread them out amongst your peers. Like, I don't care who goes and does it, just go get it done.
Yeah, because that's hard to do all of one person all in one day. It's not just that easy, is it? So
no, and they're a lot more cautious now too, especially with these bidding wars that are happening. Even if they put less than 20% down, there's a huge possibility that the insurer, CMHC or Genworth or Canada Guarantee, are going to want an appraisal done.
Right. Yeah.
When there's that big difference in what the list price was versus what the purchase price is.
Yeah, because for a long time you didn't, you know, the appraisals were done only when they were putting more money down, right? And it was all very, very easy. And we thought it was just, you know, that's going to get handled, right? But it's a factor to be considered for sure for people.
For sure.
You know, if they're buying. So, but well, I'm going to have all your information there for everybody, and if they've got any questions, because like we keep saying, we need the pre-approval. You need to understand not to do anything drastic that's going to affect your credit rating. But there's, we also need some more inventory. So if anybody they want to list, please give me a call too, because there is a shortage of listings and it's a great market. And Sudbury's doing really well through this whole COVID situation.
Oh my gosh, yes. Amazingly.
Yeah, really, really well. So, I mean, Sudbury economy is not what you're reading in other cities. It's not what's going on. So, you know, you need.
And I think today we have to start wearing masks.
Yes, yeah, when you're going into a business, yeah. Which, I mean, pretty much I was doing that anyway.
For sure.
You know, health issues with my husband. So, yeah, we will get through this. I know it just seems like, well, there's nothing happening here, but it could very well be somebody coming into town from another area that still has some cases going on.
100%. Yeah.
And we want to stay healthy through this, and we want to keep these businesses opening. Some of these small business owners, please support them.
Yes.
Take out, go to their, you know, try to support them, because they are struggling. And if we don't want that COVID back here for you know, let's keep the numbers down here so that Sudbury can get through this and be strong.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much,
Awesome.
Trina. It's always good talking to you. And I mean, it's just so much for people to understand, but there's a reason why all these things are in place, and we need professionals like you to help. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Gwen.
Okay.
Enjoy the rest of your week. Stay cool.
Yeah, I will. Bye-bye.
Bye now.